Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another unannounced live, and I just might wait a few seconds for, I don't know, one or two of you to join, and then and if you're watching without clicking on it, just go ahead and come in, because I have some good information to share with you. So, whoever saw my last two lives, I hope that you enjoyed them and you took something from them or got something out of it. And if you didn't, then I'm pretty sure you will get something from this one, because this is something that is so common. I think it affects almost everybody, whether they know it or not. So what I'm here to talk about today is, just like the title says, is it's a common cause for foot pain, toe pain, ankle pain, knee pain, hip pain, and back pain. Sometimes it's just in the foot, sometimes it's just in the knee. But I'm here to bring up one of the causes that a lot of people don't think about, or they don't know about, or maybe they're unfamiliar with. So what that is your shoes and your footwear. And I actually have a couple examples right here to explain. So most shoes that people wear today it's called conventional footwear, and it's usually, fashion based, or sometimes it's athletic, right? Because you have runner shoes, or just different types of footwear depending upon what sport you may play, or what functions you go and do. So maybe you go to the beach a lot and you wear sandals, or you go play soccer and you wear cleats, or things like that. Or you go out a lot and you like to wear high heels, or you like to wear dress-up shoes because you go to an office job and that's kind of what you want to wear there to look professional. So I'm going to show you an example. There's the conventional footwear, which is what I'm speaking of right now, and then there's natural footwear. And what natural footwear is the opposite of what conventional footwear is. It is actually based on how our feet are naturally designed to work. So I'm going to show you a couple examples right now. So this would be more of a conventional shoe, right? This is a basketball shoe, but it's pretty conventional. You can see the toe box kind of tapers as it goes up towards the top, right? It's pretty stiff. I'm like really pushing on it pretty hard, and it won't bend. Like, it won't really flex too much, just maybe a little bit on the tip. It's got a decent amount of padding inside the shoe, so it's maybe about yay high right here. And this particular shoe doesn't have much heel elevation. It may have a slightly elevated heel, and it doesn't have too much toe spring. So you can kind of see the toe kind of springs up just a little bit, which most shoes nowadays do, but it's not too bad. There's some athletic shoes, a lot of runner shoes like Nikes and stuff like that. They're really like this. The toe spring is really high. So, and then I'm going to compare this. This is conventional footwear. I'm going to compare this to natural footwear. So this is a natural footwear shoe. You can tell already just by looking at it, it's a lot flatter on the bottom. There's not really any toe spring. This is a zero drop, which means there's no heel elevation at all. And also, it's very, very flexible. Like, I can just easily, without even trying, I can just crunch the whole shoe up, like, no problem, right? It just very, very flexible. So it lets your foot just do its thing. And if you look at the toe box, look at the difference. I mean, look at the width difference, right? So if you take a look at that, you can see this shoe is a lot fatter in the toe area than this shoe, right? This one tapers, this one doesn't. This one's wide. So the importance of that is, if you look at, so I'm going to take a pretty important picture that's kind of eye-opening, and show you it for a second. So if you look at these feet, so this foot is from somebody that wore shoes their whole life, and this foot is somebody that pretty much didn't wear shoes their whole life. And you can see the difference right there, right? So if you look at the anchor point of the heel as it goes up towards the toe, it's pretty much a straight line from that anchor point it's pretty much aligned is what I'm saying, because it goes off to the side a little bit, but that's how it's supposed to do. And if you look at this one, it's just way off. You know, the big toe is getting pushed in and abducted towards the rest of the toes, and that's very important because your toes aren't supposed to do that. When the big toe gets pushed in towards the other toes, your arch muscle shuts off and the blood gets restricted to that area. So if we look at when you're first born, your toes look more like this. Like the widest part of your foot is your toes. Now every baby's foot is not exactly the same, you know, so some babies might not be as wide, but that's pretty much kind of how our feet naturally are. And by the time we're adults, your foot ends up being more like, you know, something like this down here, where maybe it's not that crazy, but you know, the toes end up getting squished together. And if you can see this is an old picture, but this man's shoes, his feet took the shape of his shoes basically. And the one on the top is someone from a native tribe that never wore shoes. So their feet maintained, it's called splay, when your toes like splay out. It maintained that separation that it's supposed to have. And got a call for a second. The reason why I bring this all up is because it has a huge impact on the blood flow to your feet, how your feet function, and basically how your knees are lined up, how your hips are lined up, and the impact it has on your back when you're walking or you're running or any of those activities. Same thing with the knees and the hips, like I just said. So if we look again at the conventional shoe, if you look where your toes are supposed to be, they're supposed to be in here, right? So your big toe is actually supposed to be way over here, but because the shoe tapers towards the top, your big toe gets abducted and pushed in towards the rest of the toes, right? And I just said a second ago, if you're watching, that what that does is it shuts off the arch muscle, right? So the big toe gets abducted, shuts off the arch muscle, and then it can't act as a shock absorber anymore when you're walking and you're running. And then another factor is when your shoe has toe spring and it's up like this, you have these muscles on the top of your foot called your toe extensor muscles. They're like little bands or like little strings, and those become very tight because think about it as a band getting pulled this way, and it's just pulling your toes up, and that causes hammer toes. It causes your arch to be even weaker because if you're pulling this up, it causes your arch to flatten and drop, right? And then on top of that, you have heel elevation with the padding, so it brings up your heel a bit, plus you have toe spring. So now your foot's in a very compromised position, and the toe spring actually shortens your calf muscle, so it causes tightness in the calf. So if you wear any kind of heels on your shoes or high heels or anything like that, I mean, it makes the problem even worse, obviously. And I'm not saying never wear high heels again or never wear heels again, but what I am saying is to try to limit the amount you wear them, and when you can, to try to use more natural type footwear, either barefoot, sandals that let your toes do their thing, shoes that are very flexible, like I just showed you this one that just flexes really good. But that's just the beginning of it. I mean, all these things I just described, it's a chain reaction, right? So when your arch shuts off and your foot starts to pronate, meaning your foot starts going this way as opposed to being lined up and straight, as it goes this way, your tibia or your shin, it follows, right? It follows with your foot. So that throws off the alignment of your knee. And then maybe it doesn't happen right away. You feel fine, you know, for years as you're growing up and everything. But as you play sports or as you exercise or do squats or run or, you know, anything like that, you're having this uneven pressure on the knee joint. And then same thing with the hip, same thing with the back. It throws off your gait, meaning like when you walk, your walking pattern. Your heel strike is way off. When we strike the ground, let me use this one better. When we strike the ground, we're supposed to start kind of towards the outer edge. This is like the natural way it happens. It starts towards the outer edge, and it kind of comes across your foot, and you push off more towards the big toe. And then as that happens, your arch stiffens, and it gives you more push. It gives you more power to push off with your big toe and your calf. Now, when you have a bunch of padding on the bottom of your shoe, when you strike the floor with your heel when you're walking, it throws off that whole rhythm, and your knee is not in the right position, and you basically take a bigger impact throughout your knee, your hip, and your back, right? And then when your heel is elevated, you have something called a plumb line. Like if I stood you up and you stood facing this way to the side, you have something called a plumb line. If you just bring a line straight down your back all the way down to your feet, and when you elevate your heels, that plumb line gets thrown off. So your hips get shifted forward, your lower back gets shifted forward, and it throws off your spine and everything. So you end up putting more pressure throughout your entire vertebrae. So simple thing. This is stuff I've learned since years ago, and I've been helping clients with for a long time. I haven't really made videos about this or anything, but I thought lately I've just been feeling like this is because this has always been a passion of mine. So I've been feeling like I need to share this stuff, and I'm just here. This all comes from a place of love, and I'm here to serve people, and this is like what I'm here to do. So if this helps just one person, like I said on that last video, then it's all worth it. But back to what I was saying. So I have a couple more pictures to show you. I mean, this one kind of speaks for itself. It's the bottom of a shoe, two shoes cut open. One is a conventional footwear, and the other one is natural footwear, and they're children's feet. But it's kind of self-explanatory. You can really see, obviously this is the natural footwear. It's letting the toes have space in between. This one's conventional footwear, so it tapers like I told you. And you can tell the toes are getting squished together. And that's a real big problem, because in between the long bones of our foot that we have that go down this way, we have nerves in between those bones. And when your feet get squished like this, when your toes get squished like this, you're pinching those nerves. So you're constricting blood flow to the toes. So if you have like cold toes and cold feet, this can be one of the causes. Also thyroid issues. So there's multiple causes, but today I'm just talking about this one cause, right? There's other variables that can cause cold feet and hands and stuff like that. But back to what I was saying. So you can end up with something called a neuroma, which feels like kind of like a pebble or a rock in your shoe that you're stepping on when you walk. And it's actually a pinched nerve. And what happens is people they actually go in for surgery for this, because it's a sharp nerve pain that radiates and doesn't really let them walk on their foot without just really bothering them, because it's a really bad pain. Sometimes it's a dull pain, but either way it's pain, and they can't get rid of it, or they feel like they can't get rid of it. The good news is you can. If you go see a regular podiatrist or a foot surgeon or something like that, they may tell you, oh, I got a foot surgery for that, and we can cut out the nerve or burn it, or they have different various things they do, but I highly recommend you do not do that, and you try some of the natural options first, because I believe you can get rid of it naturally. And I mean, I know people that have gotten rid of it, so I myself included. So again, as you can see, toes getting squished in conventional footwear, and toes nice and spaced out. And then I have, what else? Oh yeah, and then this one right here. This picture, you can see this lady's foot took the shape of her shoe as well. And you can see right here, I know it's backwards, but she has a bunion, right? And people go to the surgeon and they get that bunion shaved down. And oh, I think I have a growth, I think I have a bunion. But all a bunion really is, and I give credit to a podiatrist I learned this from, Dr. Ray McClanahan. But what a bunion is you have two bones right on the base of the big toe. And those two bones, they're called the sesamoid bones, and they act as stabilizers to your foot. So when your foot's on the floor like this, if this was your big toe right here, those two bones stabilize the big toe, because that's where you push off from. So what happens is when you're in conventional footwear and your toe is getting abducted, pushed in, it starts rotating, and one of those bones on the bottom, they start rotating outward towards the side of your foot. So in reality, when you go to the surgeon and they shave off that bone, they're actually shaving off a bone that's stabilizing your big toe. So it's actually pretty terrible. And there's a way to correct that. It just takes time and patience, and you have to have a little bit of knowledge. So either learning from people like me, or doing your research on YouTube and reading some articles. But what I was going to tell you was there's a product called Correctose, and it's a splinting device that you wear in between your toes. It's kind of like the little pads they put when women go do their nails at the nail salon, and they put those little pads in between their toes, except this one's made to be worn in your shoe. So you have to have natural footwear so you have space to wear it. But when you wear it, it helps reapproximate your toes back to the natural position they should be in so your foot can function properly. One of the things that happens is, I think most people have heard of the term plantar fasciitis, because we have a plantar fascia on the bottom of our foot, right? So if you're not familiar with the term fascia or what fascia is a connective tissue that's underneath the skin that holds your nerves, your bones, your joints, your muscles, everything in place. And it has its own nerves as well, and it's designed to basically stretch when you move, right? But it keeps everything in place, and it has its own nerves, and it's basically just as sensitive as your skin is. So you have fascia on the bottom of your foot, and when you have injuries to your foot or you have lack of movement, like I just said, these types of shoes, you can't bend them much, right? And there's some that are worse than that. So your bottom of your foot, for all these years you've been growing up, from like, I think the age of, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6, they start changing the shoes, right? They start becoming more narrow on the toe box, and all those other features I just mentioned start coming into play. If you look at really little kids' shoes, they look fat and wide and funny, right? Because they're still designed kind of like for your natural foot. But when your feet don't move like they're supposed to, the fascia, all that tissue that's designed to stretch, it becomes thickened and kind of gummy and just tight, right? And again, like I said, it has nerves. So your foot pain could be coming from your fascia being thickened and tight and damaged, and or you could have had an injury in your foot and never healed properly because you're not getting proper blood flow to your feet, right? So the reason why I even mentioned the fascia, though, the important thing is, and by the way, if you can't picture the fascia, and if you've ever cooked chicken, if you've ever cut chicken at home, it's that white stuff that you kind of have to cut through that's kind of fibrous, and you're like, damn, I can't cut through this stuff. That's what the fascia is. So we have that too, right? So the fascia is very important, and it's kind of a newer discovery in a sense, because in all the medical literature and books, you would see the muscles, the nerves, the bones, like everything basically except the fascia. They would never show the fascia because they didn't think it was important, I guess. But it's very important, and it's very, very important when it comes to injuries, pain, mobility problems, all that type of stuff. So the reason why I bring it up is because if you know about the fascia and you know what to do with your fascia, you can really help yourself when it comes to having restricted movements, having a lot of pain, just having issues in that whole area, right? Whether it's the knees, the hips, the back, ankles, the feet, all that stuff. So what would help the feet a lot is actually rolling out the calves, because your calves, all the fascia is connected, right? So throughout the body, like you could basically roll out your hamstring and your foot pain can feel better. You can roll out your calf and your foot pain can feel better or go away. It just takes time. But you can also roll out the bottom of your foot with a hard ball, like some kind of a tennis ball, a golf ball, a lacrosse ball, any kind of hard, kind of a smaller ball. You can just stand up. Don't put a ton of pressure on there. Just put enough to feel, it's going to feel a little tender, and you can just roll your foot out with a ball, and it will loosen up. And you're trying to roll out some adhesions that form, and these adhesions, like I said earlier, they cause tightness and lack of mobility, right? So doing all this rolling, it's important. I would highly suggest you do some research and you look up foam rolling and just self-myofascial release. And that's what this is. You're releasing restrictions that you have in your fascia. And it could have been from an old injury, and your fascia's retaining, it's like scar tissue basically, and it's retaining the tightness in that area, even though the muscle already healed. Maybe you injured your muscle or you injured your joint and that healed already, but the fascia still has adhesions in that area. So you need to either go get massaged if you have the money to get massaged on a regular basis, or you need to do it yourself. And that's all foam rolling really is. You get on a foam roller, right? And there's a way to do it properly, right? But you roll yourself out, and it's kind of like you're giving yourself a deep tissue massage, and you're trying to roll out and get rid of these adhesions you have in the musculature in the neighboring areas. Because a lot of the times, like, might not be every time, but a lot of the times if you have knee pain, it's not always necessarily just coming from the knee. I've helped many clients over the years completely get rid of knee pain without having to do any kind of other treatments, just by foam rolling properly, some minor stretches to the correct muscles, and also training correctly with correct form and doing the full range of motion, you know, and making sure they learn the movement properly before we load them, right? So yeah, this is a very important thing. So since I kind of covered that whole topic, I think pretty decently, let's talk about, maybe you're curious about, like, okay, well, you're talking about all this stuff, but what kind of shoes are you talking about? So the shoe I showed you, the brand is called Lems, right? And you may think like, oh, it's an ugly shoe, I don't want to wear that shoe. Okay, that's fine, that's fair. I felt the same way when I first got them, right? But maybe you're not ready for this shoe. This shoe doesn't even have any arch support because it's forcing your arch to do the work like it should, right? Whereas conventional shoes, they prop up your arch, so it's like a crutch, if you will. And then, like I said, your big toe is getting pushed in, so that's turning off the arch. So you're propping up the arch, plus you're turning off the arch at the same time with conventional footwear. So over the years, your arch totally gets weakened, and it's like any other part of the body. You don't use it, you lose it, right? If you don't train, if you don't start weight training by your late 20s, early 30s, every year you start losing muscle, whether you want to, you know, like it or not. You're going to lose some muscle. So you have to fight against this stuff, you know. It's part of the aging process, but we don't have to lose muscle. We can actually gain muscle. I've helped many clients in later age get a lot stronger and gain muscle when they didn't think that was possible. But back to what I was saying. So if this is too much for you because you've been wearing conventional shoes all your life and you're not barefoot that often and you think your feet are probably pretty weak, there's other brands out there. And another good transitional shoe that's really good is Merrell. So if you can see that right there, these are Merrells. So these ones do have a little bit of arch support, not a ton, but they have a little bit. They're still pretty flexible. They're a little less flexible than those last ones I showed you. And the toe box is also still wide enough so where your big toe is gonna be pretty good in there, right? It's not, you know, it's not as wide. This one's still wider, right? But it's pretty good. I mean, it's a good transitional shoe. So this one's also zero drop. So there's no heel elevation. Zero drop just means there's zero heel elevation, right? It's pretty flat. Doesn't have a bunch of toe spring or anything like that. But again, like I said, it's flexible. And yeah, all the boxes are checked pretty much. So Merrell's a good brand. Lem's a good brand. And Lem's has other shoes now. When they first came out, they only had that one shoe I'm showing you, which is called that's the Primal 2. And then the Merrell I showed you, this one's called the Trail Glove. So this one, it's not so thin that if you step on a rock, you're going to hurt your feet. It's actually got like some good rubber down here. Not really thick either. It's like just thick enough to protect your feet, you know, because you don't want to, the last thing you want to do is you're trying to make your feet stronger and get better and get out of pain. And then you just buy one of these natural footwears and then you go for a run right away and you fracture a bone in your foot, which a lot of people have done. So I got to caution you, don't go out and just buy one of these shoes right away. You have to transition slowly. So if you do buy one of these shoes, I would say start with like an hour a day, maybe when you do some light exercise. And then every week or two, increase it by another hour or two. And take it from there. You know, you kind of like play it by ear, but don't buy it and then just go out for a run or do crazy physical activity because you can actually hurt your feet because your feet have been getting deconditioned, you know, since you've been growing up over all these years. So it's almost like you've never weight trained in your whole life and now you're 40, 50, 60, and all of a sudden you decide to have like a 2-hour heavy duty strength training day. You know, you're going to probably pull something or tear something or feel really terrible the next day or just hurt yourself really bad. So I caution you first, you know, take it easy, go slowly. But what I would highly suggest is not to just get these shoes. I would actually suggest doing maybe I'll put some videos out later, I don't know, but I'd really suggest, and just YouTube a couple of videos on how to foam roll. And I highly suggest you kind of start a foam rolling program where you roll out, if you have feet problems, you want to roll out your calves, your shins if you can, your hamstrings, and your hips and your glutes. Yeah, and the side of your leg, which is called your IT band, but don't worry about the name. Your iliotibial band. It's just the side of your leg. So all those areas if you can. Most importantly though, the calf, the shin, hamstrings. And then like I said earlier, get a hard ball, roll out the bottom of your foot, okay? For people that have hammer toes, I'm gonna, in a little while, I'm gonna probably link up some videos in the bottom, at least one or two, that's gonna go more in depth for anybody that has some of these problems that I'm talking about. But for people that have hammer toes, where their toes are getting scrunched up like this, right? What it is earlier I told you have these long bones in your foot, right? Just like the hand, you have long bones. So you have these bands, like I told you, where they get tight because of that toe spring, right? So for whoever has hammer toes, there's a stretch that you do. So if this is my foot, what you want to do, everybody, almost everybody I know that runs or that does activity, they'll go and they'll put their foot against the wall and they'll stretch it this way because they want to stretch their calf, or they'll go on a step and they'll let their heel hang and they'll let their calf get a stretch and their foot get a stretch. But almost nobody I know, like nobody stretches the opposite side of the foot. Nobody takes the toes from the top of the foot and pulls it down. So like, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to show you right now, but like if you get your foot, and this is the top of your foot, this is the bottom of your foot, and you grab the top of your toes and you pull your toes towards your heel like that. And that's gonna stretch out those toe extensor muscles. That's gonna help with your hammer toes or your toes feeling tight. Yeah, I think that's gonna cover the majority of it. But I mean, I've experienced this myself, and I've had clients that have experienced this. Anybody that has like serious lower back problems, just changing your shoes, I mean, it's a huge, like, it's incredible. Like it's just it's a game changer. Like you'll notice maybe after several days, sometimes it takes a little longer, sometimes it's immediate. You'll feel relief in your back and you'll be like, wow, like my back's not getting irritated as often. And it's because of your shoes. Like I told you, it just throws off your alignment in your whole body with your hips and your knees and your back. So we're supposed to have that lumbar curve, and then the thoracic, and then the cervical. It's supposed to curve like that, but slightly, right? It's not an extreme, but when you throw off that alignment, when your heels are elevated, it makes it become more extreme. So your hips shift forward, and then your upper back has to compensate. So it starts becoming like a sway back is what they call it, right? So, and then that just makes your back get worse over the years, right? So this common issue is it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's widespread. And because shoes have become something of fashion, and I totally get it. Like I like to wear really nice looking shoes too, you know? So if you're concerned with that, I mean, Monday through Friday, maybe when you're doing your thing, like I don't know what jobs you guys have, but you can try to wear one of these like natural footwear type shoes. The majority of the time, maybe like 80% of the time. And then when you have to go to like, I don't know, functions, or you got to go to something professional or something, maybe you can switch over to a conventional footwear for a few hours of the day. You know, and then the rest of the day you kick your shoes off, and I mean, everybody knows when you get home, when you kick your shoes off, you're like, oh, this feels so good, right? Because it feels good to just be like your natural feet on the ground, you know? And then another important thing that I'll kind of like just mention, but I'm not going to get into because it's going to make the video like way too long. So whoever I have still watching, thank you. But another thing is, when you wear shoes all the time, your skin and your feet never make contact with the earth, right? So you never actually touch the dirt or touch the grass or touch the soil or the sand or anything like that. And I think that's pretty important, you know? And I think that's part of why when we go to the beach, we feel so good, besides getting the sun, you know, because most people go and lay out on their towel and they make contact with the earth, you know, and they're getting into that, they're grounding basically, right? And we just never ground anymore because we have electricity running through our bodies. So with the rubber soles on the shoes, I mean, even sandals and all that stuff, we're not grounding with the earth anymore. And there's There's a lot of people out there that have done research on grounding, how it affects the blood and how it affects your energy and your healing capabilities and all that stuff. So, feel free to go check that out if you've never heard of that before. But that's just going to make this video too long to touch on that. But one more time, I'll show it to you before I end the video for whoever just kind of skimmed through. I mean, look at that. A picture speaks 1,000 words, right? I mean, that's just eye-opening, right? I mean, I remember when I first saw this stuff, I was just like blown away. I was like, wow, like that's insane. I didn't know our feet were supposed to look like that. And if you think about it, just from a mechanical point of view, this foot, you can tell it's going to have way better grip on the ground. It's going to have way better stability, and it's going to be more functional, especially if you can move and bend your foot the way it was designed to move and bend. And I'm going to close off with one last thing with the people that like to exercise, they like to strength train and work out, and maybe you have trouble with squats, right? Even body weight squats or weighted squats, whichever one. And you have trouble going down low enough without feeling like you're going to fall back or fall forward, right? You feel like you're kind of off with that because you feel like your heels want to come off the ground the lower you go. So all that is mainly, sometimes it comes from other areas, but the main thing that comes from is ankle mobility. So a lot of the times your ankle mobility is just bad. So once you roll out your calves and your shins and you kind of get rid of some of those adhesions and restrictions in your calves, and your ankle mobility improves, your squat gets way better. Like you're able to basically squat lower, and you're able to, even with weight on your back or weight in the front, you can squat lower without feeling like your heels have to come up, right? Or without having to put a block underneath your heels to go that low. So just remember that if you're having trouble with any kind of squats, body weight squats, weighted squats, anything like that, and you feel like your heels are going to come off the ground because you can't go that low, then you probably have tight calf muscles and the fascia as well. For anybody that walks upstairs and they tend to trip a lot, right? They feel like, I can't get my leg high enough, and I trip, and maybe it happens more on one side than the other. Again, that's to do with ankle mobility a lot of the time. Sometimes it can come from the hip and you're not lifting your knees high enough, but the majority of the time, and I have experience with this, I've worked with clients with this, it's coming from ankle mobility. Like, so if I'm standing up and let's say this is my shin, this is my foot, if you flex your foot up, that's called dorsiflexion, right? You're flexing your foot. And then if you flex and you push your foot down, that's called plantar flexion, right? So, you have extension, right? So you have flexion, extension. So when you do dorsiflexion, if that range kind of sucks and you can't lift your toes and your foot up high enough because your range is limited because your calf is tight, when you go up that stair, what do you think is going to happen? Your toe is going to get caught on the stair and then you're going to trip. And this is one of the reasons, not all the reasons, but this is one of the reasons why the older somebody gets when they're, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, they start having more falls. Maybe they don't even have stairs at their house. They just have like 2 steps on the front porch, but they have a fall there and they go, I don't know what happened. Maybe I'm just getting older. My balance is getting worse. And maybe their balance is getting worse, but on top you add, insult to injury, and their ankle mobility is getting bad because of they're not moving around like they used to. Maybe they're not working out regularly. They're not walking as much as they used to. So their fascia and the calf muscles getting tight, which then doesn't allow the foot and the ankle to have the range it used to have when it dorsiflexes, so they can clear that step, right, for the next step. So these are things that, and that little tiny thing that you work on, even at an older age, could be the difference between you having a really bad fall where you hit your face and you totally get messed up, and then it takes you who knows how long to recover, because when you're getting up there 60s and 70s, 80s, you don't recover like you used to when you were in your teens and your 20s and your 30s, right? So this stuff is, I would say this stuff is very, very, very important, especially as you get older. So just keep this stuff in mind. And I'm probably leaving stuff out that I wanted to talk about, but that's kind of how it goes when it comes to lives, right? I just had to put this information out there because, again, this stuff comes from a place of love, and I want to help people, and I feel like this is what I've been put here to do. This is one of my natural talents and gifts that come easily to me, and I want to help those that maybe this area is a difficult area for them, and they don't have a lot of knowledge in this area. So I thought I would share. We never know how much time we have around here, right? So this is not a long life. So I thought I better put some of this information out there before, like, just who knows what, you know. So I would feel bad if I didn't, when I could actually help people. So again, take care. Hope you have a good day. Hope you've been having a good day. And until next time. And if you have any questions, just feel free to comment below. I'm going to try to include a couple links, like I said earlier, about some of these issues. Take care. See you next time.